everyone. Thank you for joining this webinar. So I have a privilege to share about the topics one, developing an effective enterprise architecture framework for financial services. So actually my presentation today is taken from a real implementation in one of the bank, how to set up enterprise architecture framework. Basically, most of the bank, I don't think any of the bank don't have enterprise architecture, but they function differently. So what happened is that when the digital enterprise architecture being introduced, then there will be some sort of alignment and also reorganization and also restructuring the entire architecture. So yeah, this topic about, I will finish maybe less than half an hour, but I will just share and highlight what are so-called tasks and typical impact that when the digital enterprise architecture coming into a typical bank. So let me just take about 1 minute to introduce who we are. So I think we are from ATD, and I'm heading the group of the company. So we are specializing in the consulting, coaching, training, and also running the event like this for, of course, around the topic of enterprise architecture, which is what our passion and what we are specializing in. So we do also offer a very comprehensive training and certification program for enterprise architecture suite from business architect, information, software, infrastructure, solution, and also all the information or data architecture. So we offer TOGA from the business architect, Archimate, and the enterprise architecture framework itself. And of course, the governance, yeah, because enterprise architecture cannot run from the governance itself, like a COVID certified. And of course, all the DevOps and today the context of the ITIL to support the so-called afterlife when we go live the system. So there will be some sort of a framework to support the operation, like to meet the SLA and etc. So we do offer a comprehensive training there. So these are some of our clients. So actually we have more than this, but this is just one of the highlight that the winner of the Open Group Awards in 2018 and 2019. So last year, 2020, they didn't have the award. So this year also might not have, but next year I think they might have another award. So hopefully we can submit more of a successful case study for this type of the prestigious award. And these are some of the clients that has so-called subscribed to Gartner, and what happened is that all the enterprise architecture are being guided, supervised, and reviewed by the Gartner itself. Yeah. And these are the so-called award of last year. So this year they have a 2021 award, so already closed. So let's see how many of our clients can win this award. So these are two last year. Two of our clients won in the top 10 EA awards. Yeah, for Pemodalan Nasional Berhad and Mampu. So the rest are all some of the clients in Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, and also Hong Kong. So let me just go straight into the context. So these are the typical context if you are working as an enterprise architecture in typical financial services in the bank, right? So they have so-called, you need to be aligned with the strategy, business, data, and technology. So basically these are so-called high-level context where the architect typically being put in. Yeah? So for instance, in terms of the strategy, so basically is that the architect are expected to answer such a question, right? What is the outcome of the strategy? And of course, people may ask, which business capability to help to fulfill the strategy? Can we answer that? Or which application play an important role for the strategy? Because say we might ask for the budget, but how does that help my strategy if you're asking for the key stakeholders? So we need to be able to answer that. And in terms of the business, of course, the question like, is the current business process automated? Because I heard some of the process are still semi-automated, right? Customer have complained here and the system cannot access that. They have to go to login, logout, etc. So these are the typical questions that are so-called raised in terms of the business. And of course, the process flow, as well as, okay, which application that currently supporting the business process? Show me the map. Can we answer that? So these are the typical questions that trigger all the architects if you are working in the typical financial services. And of course, in terms of the data, where is the source of data? Can you tell me? And then why is it so complicated to create this report? I just want to get this report. Why taking 2 months? Can't we just get it tomorrow? Right? Someone asks you 3 o'clock, can we just deploy it tomorrow? You still don't know how to get the data? So these are something that are real and it's non-trivial question, but become a big deal if you don't have a proper so-called digital EA in place. Of course, for the technology, what will happen to my business if this application is down, which application integrate with this application, right? I need to know all. So how do we answer this? Of course, to answer this question, there are 4 things you need to be so-called financial services bank need to establish. First is that content meta model. Do we have the structure of our enterprise? So content meta model, I can just equate with the entity relationship for the particular system, but I'm talking here about the particular enterprise. Do we have that view? Do we have that design? If not, we can answer just now the previous question that I placed in the previous slide. So we need to have some sort of the meta model to get it right, because without this, we be the headless chicken and we have become a reactive. The second one, I think, process. So this is something very, very important. So we need to know the process and the life cycle. So this is talking about, of course, the framework, the methodology, and all the blueprint that we need to have in place. Then the next one is the governance. So all the things that we are putting in place, the content and process, we need to be governed. If not governed, everyone can do whatever they like. And especially in the financial services, they are very stringent in terms of the audit and also review and compliance, right, with the central bank. So we need to have so-called governance in place, and the governance itself needs to be so-called automated in most of the cases. We don't do a manual intervention unless necessary. And of course, last but not least, the correct right EA repository, which is what most of the organization is that they have some sort of repository, but there's some using Excel and some using the repository, but they don't configure correctly. So all these like content meta model, process governance need to be embedded into the repository to get the maximum outcome of our enterprise architecture. So that the previous slide that I expressed, we can answer that to the key stakeholders as and when they demand us to answer. Otherwise, architect really, catch off guard and we say, boss, can you give me 1 week? Okay, 1 week, we might not get the job. That's the reality of life today, right? The management asking us, I can give you tomorrow. You tell me 1 week, forget it, Aaron. You better update your CV. No, kidding. But the reality is that we need to be fast responsive, and also we need to be so-called proactive in our engagement. And this, of course, require a framework, right? Just know the process, the methodology. So we need to have some sort of framework. So one of the things is TOGAF. So I believe this is the widely used framework. So I believe some of you in this webinar already are TOGAF certified. So let me just highlight, right? Just to give you a refresher. So basically, in terms of the preliminary, we need to make sure that always get the management buy-in. Because we cannot do architecture bottom-up. Yes, we can, but very tiring, trust me. I have come across met people that want to do bottom-up. The journey is very, very tough and pain, right? I don't know when I can move up to the next level. So we need to be able to get the right management support, and then we need to establish the principle. Then after that, of course, preparing the entire organization to go through the transformation. So when we go talking about phase A, B, C, D, in the TOGAF, we call it about architecture building block. So architecture building block, of course, first is that we need to know the vision and the strategy. So where are the organization is heading today in the running a digital transformation? Once we know that, then we can understand what are the business need to change. So whatever thing need to change, we consider it as a gaps, right? So we develop the business architecture gap. Then after that, of course, logically, we look at the data or information gap, and then software or application gap, and last but not least, technology or infrastructure gap. If you see here the order ABCD, many IT people actually, they are very comfortable in the C and D, right? They're just talking about data, talking application, about technology, about infrastructure. But they don't really understand, or they're afraid to jump into the A and B, which is talking about enterprise vision and strategy, and of course, business architecture. But without A and B, whatever we do in the C and D, we're talking about data, application, and technology, we deliver little value. Because the senior management can only see the value in the A and B, which is in terms of the enterprise vision and the strategy, as well as in the business architecture itself. So once this is done, then we can develop a solution. So solution, we are talking here about the first thing first, we consolidate all the gap, because we know the A, in terms of the vision, then in the BCD, we got the gap. So the gap will be consolidated, become a project. So this project become a transformation project. Then of course, in the F, we're getting the project plan, assign the team, and we basically got all the tasks. Then in the G is where the duration of the project. So in the project 7 months, then architect will look and supervise to make sure that compliance is there. Right? So I have a diagram to illustrate this in the next couple of slides. And if there's any changes, it become part of life. Because some people are asking that, oh, my organization is very dynamic. I don't think need architecture. Well, The more dynamic you are, the more you need architecture. If your organization never changed in the last 5 years, don't need architecture. Why? Everything no change. When the thing change fast, that's where you need the architects. Right? You need the architecture to keep track of the changes, to make sure that all the changes are consolidated and all the changes can be integrated and in the holistic manner to support the business goal. So in terms of the layers, of course, we're talking about here the Archimate, right? So Archimate got business layer, application layer, technology layer, and then of course the strategy and motivation layer and implementation and migration layer. So all these layers are, because architecture is addressing a complexity of the real world. To address or to simplify the real world complexity, we need to make it simple. So one of the way is to make it layer. Yeah. So of course, when we're talking about this enterprise architecture itself in the financial services, you cannot run away from security, especially today cybersecurity. So cybersecurity itself is not only at the network, right? Many people think, just leave it to the hosting guy to settle. No, we have to handle right from the business itself. Then look at the data, application, and technology. Basically, all the domain of architecture need to be looked after in terms of the security. Cannot be just afterthought process. And this is an example on how you address enterprise security architecture. So if we divide between the EA team and the security team, right? So security, if you think like your security are a big size team, then you can appoint as an architect, right? But the architect itself can be part of the enterprise architecture team. Okay, so that one is depend on your organization structure. So typically in the preliminary and the vision is that you understand about the business driver, you define the business objective, security principle, risk appetite, and security resource plan. So these are very, very important because why? At the point in time, we know the vision and the strategy of the organization. This way we can tailor our security, right? So if the senior management said that security is not their concern, then we can loosen a bit, but doesn't mean we open up the door, but we loosen a bit. But if security is number one, then we can tighten the whole process, etc. Once you understand at the top level, then we can embed the security in our business. Okay, how are we going to run this? Then after that, we can embed into our data and application as well as all the interfaces with the security team, right? So like identity management, continuity management, security monitoring, compliance, etc. Then we can look at the infrastructure, the technology itself, rather than we start with the technology or application, but we do the rest first. Then, of course, we are looking at the requirement, right? Talking about requirement, we are looking at the business attribute, control, and etc. Then during the project, we need to look at the mitigation. What are mitigation plan that we can develop? And of course, look at the, when we come out the project plan, we look at the assessment. Yeah. And of course, look at the implementation, look at the security audit and compliance. And in the change management, we look at the entire governance. Okay, so these are just example that in the typical organization where security are being applied into the architecture. So you look, everything is the structure, right? It's not that you give it to the security guy, 2% running around and then talk with the vendor, installing all the patches, etc. We don't know what happened. So we need to have some sort of the architecture embedded as part of the entire organization. And this is one of the so-called pictures in terms of the executing a strategy and the execution. So typically, just now you look at the TOGAF itself, that they got the vision, they got the business, application data, and the infrastructure. So this is where basically you can look at the so-called the connectivity between the strategy and execution. So the bridge is actually take place in the middle. Business capability, right? Then I think this is where also one of the key framework today that are being used a lot in the financial services across the globe, which is Beyond. Okay, so Beyond, I think we are very fortunate. I think the next speaker, Patrick, will be sharing with you the Beyond. Then of course I will be also doing a moderating at the last session to asking him more. And if you have any question about Beyond, I think you can take this opportunity to check. And also type in your question. Yeah? So basically the alignment is between enterprise vision to the IT project. This is very, very important because people say, what's the value of this network? What's the value of this system? If you cannot connect to the business capability, then it is very difficult to generate value. Because from the business capability, we can connect to the strategy and the vision. Okay, so this is where the bridge between business and technology. Because in the past, we always think like how to integrate business and technology. So the answer is the business capability is one of the way to effectively so-called establish this. So this is an example on the capability map in the typical bank. So this particular bank, consumer banking department, have a 4 capability. Okay, so they can develop and manage product services, market, sell product, and manage IT, as well as manage financial resources. So here, of course, can also be looked at the dependency, right? So consumer banking in the middle, supported by the 4 capability. And we can also look, for instance, at this type of the capability map. So this capability map is very, very important in terms of our structure in the particular bank. Okay? So we look at the capability in terms of the so-called the map itself, because this map is not standalone, but this map is connected to the rest of the organization, to the strategy, to the application, to the infrastructure, to the data, to the business, and etc. So, for instance, this is an example of the content meta model that the first thing first that I mentioned, every bank need to have. So they need to define their structure of their physical bank itself. So actually, after we get this, we can quickly generate a so-called a digital twin of your particular bank. Yeah. So this one is where, if you see the legend on the left, so the legend on the left is that they got what they call it a motivation, strategy, business, application, technology, implementation, and migration. These are actually the layers in the enterprise, right? So in anything that you do, you can connect back to these particular layers. So this actually we are using Archimate. So we model on the motivation, strategy, capability map, the organization viewpoint, business function viewpoint, and goal contribution viewpoint, as well as all the processes and the technology usage itself. So this is just one example that every organization need to have if you want to define the structure. If you can have this definition correctly defined, then you can configure it into the repository and you can run the so-called the real digital EA. So all the questions just now, the senior management asking about in my first 2 slides, you can answer it quickly. So this is actually the key for a successful digital EA setup. So example on this particular strategy, right? So this is basically every department run their own strategy. And so for those of you who are not familiar with this, this is actually the symbol from Archimate. So you need to have defined this, right? So we understand zoom in, for instance, for the first, for the payment, right? For the payment layers, the strategy layers. So we can understand that this particular payment supported by many capability. Yeah. So one of the capability itself, we will realize the outcome, and the outcome we also realize the business goal, and the business goal belong to the particular department. So this is one of the way on how we can show how the architecture itself, the capability can help to achieve the goal of the particular key stakeholders. And of course, later the capability will be supported by many of the technology or application or data. So in this instance, this is one of the snapshot on the particular application portfolio in a typical bank, right? So I purposely make it small so you can't really see, but this is actually just one of the portfolio of the core banking. Then if we zoom in into the particular area, right? So every core banking component itself actually supporting particular capability. And this is very important. Like just now, the mapping, because after we define the meta model, so we know exactly where are the dependency, where are the impact analysis. So if I change particular application, I know exactly which capability is impacted and how the capability impact particular key stakeholders, how the capability impact the business, and etc. So these are so-called typical EA function. In the many of the EA are actually EA team are acting as a governance, right? As a solution team. So these are just one example as it means in many organizations or many banks today that I come across, they are typically set up like this. So they have a so-called project prioritization, right? So they got the PMO and they start the project, they kick off the project. So EA actually just being called in, right? To review the project, okay? Then during the project execution, so EA team sometimes being called, sometimes sometimes are not being called at all. Okay, so EA team, if being called, they will look and review, right? But sometimes in this context is that the EA is part of the IT project team, and EA, instead of helping, actually is blocking the project in many cases, based on what I come across and work with the quite number of banks. So it's typically it's not a smooth relationship, right? So if the IT team have a choice, they say they want to get rid of the IT team, and they want to get rid of the EA team because EA team doesn't help, right? Then in terms of the so-called any changes, again back to the EA team. EA team being called in and then see whether you want to approve or don't approve, right? So these are the typical setup in the many of the FSI that I come across. Yeah. So by right, this the just now the two setup is because you have the EA is part of the project management. The EA is part of the PMO, right? It's not really quite independent. That actually all the input need to be done by the architecture team. I mean, in terms of validation, business alignment, strategy, validation, and etc. Okay. So where the EA actually should be before the project management, right? Because people say, oh, I need to set up EAO. EAO to me or to us is that actually is the PMO -1. So it's basically it's a program management office -1, where basically you understand, you work closely with the key stakeholders to discover their vision, their strategy, their mission, etc. And of course, the bottom part is where you need to have the right digital EA repository as a single source of truth for all team from EAO, PMO to ITSM. Otherwise, they will be like a Chinese whisper. You know the game Chinese whisper? They got 10 people. So you whisper one statement. By the time person 1 to person 10, the person 10 say something different. That's what happened in many of the IT projects if you don't have a proper single source of truth. So the top layer is where you connect between business, technology, strategy together. So this is what it should be, right? So if you understand where the EA should function, so typically the EAO is where you also involved in the EA project initiation. This is where you start discovering or understand what are the key stakeholders' concerns, right? We model their driver and their strategy. Then after that, we go into the analysis and design. So we understand the impact bring to the business, to the data, application, and technology. Okay. Then after that, we develop a solution. So solution basically is the high-level solutioning, whereby we understand that certain technology required to be procured, right? So we need to plug into the particular technology after the architecture is done. Yeah. So this is typically done by the enterprise architecture office. Then from there, of course, we can hand over to the PMO. Okay. So PMO, we prioritize all the project. So PMO said, okay, this is the request or so-called the output from the enterprise architecture team. They got 20 projects, but PMO we prioritize based on the budget and also priority of the need of the organization in terms of which project should go first. Then from there, PMO we execute the implementation. That's where the enterprise architecture actually playing a governance, right? Because architecture now is they know what they have developed. They want to see the real execution. It's like the construction. The construction is after they draw architecture, they will go on site to periodically survey or ensure its conformance, right? Then once that one is done, go live, then they go change management. So change management, there will be all the activity required to implement or adapt to the changes. That's where the enterprise architecture office as well work closely with the ITSM team, right? So typically now PMO and ITSM, they got DevOps to combine them. Then they look at the gaps alignment, right? So if is there any architecture need to be changed? So these are so-called the good model moving forwards, yeah. Instead of we are doing a governance or solutioning part. And in terms of the repository itself, so we need to set up properly. So they got, of course, we need to embed our meta model, the methodology, or the template references like beyond EA framework and etc. Okay, and of course how the domain itself being organized, right? Business, data, application, technology, as well as the whole life cycle. So because architecture is always like in the TOGAF is the like wheels, so you are rotating, right? So you go to transition 1, transition 2, transition 3, and how you can so-called preserve the previous transition in the repository. Okay, so these are something very, very important. And of course, not to forget about maturity. So maturity also very, very critical. So we need to know about where we are. Okay, so typically when an organization just started the digital EA journey, so typically their maturity is around 2.0, right? So basically maybe this year in the middle of the year, right? They measure their maturity, so 2.0. Then after that, of course, next year, right? Next year and also the year after, we are targeting about 2.5, right? Because we are maturing in terms of our practice, right? In the context of the maturity, they call it developing. Then after that, of course, we're talking about define. Defined means we are achieving at the level 3. Right? So when you go in the defined states, basically you will have the full integration with your IT team, right? With your software development lifecycle team, and you can onboard your business team together. So your single source of truth should be able to connect from your Archimate to the BPMN and UML. Then of course you want to achieve next level, which is manage, right? But of course manage is level 5, but reality is that 3.5 is already highly efficient. We are talking now about efficient enterprise architecture, because you don't want to go, I mean, maintaining 3.5 is already good, because we have done a lot of the maturity assessment, and not many organizations can reach 3.5. Right? It's a lot of the effort and investment required. Then of course, if you are the next, 5-6 years, when you are everyone become a EA as a culture, maybe you can maintain at the 4.0. Yeah, so this is something the journey like. And of course, with that, what we are trying to do is that many organizations today, many financial services, that focusing a lot, EA focusing on the solution, and some of the manual EA process, because use Excel spreadsheet, and even they got repository, but it's not really configured correctly. Then of course, fragmented architecture practice, more on the reactive and unmanaged architecture asset and independent architecture model. So they got multiple version, multiple project, different project or different version of architecture. So what it should be is that we need, instead of solution focus, we need to be focused on the architecture, right? So we need to be sort of consolidate all the effort into a single initiative. Then, of course, talking about manual EA process, this way we need to automate all our EA process. Right? Not only the business process need to be automated, but EA process also need to be automated, because we are living in the digital era today. Of course, from the fragmented architecture practice, we can unify and we use a perpetual architecture practice. Right? So we are nimble and we are adaptable. So we have the meta model. So certain thing that we know that certain meta model are mandatory, certain are optional, and we know exactly where to apply the optional part. Then the next one, of course, unmanaged architecture asset. We can use reusable and managed architecture asset. That's why we need to have just now the life cycle itself. We need to know what we have done in the earlier our journey and how we can reuse them. So basically, don't need to reinvent the wheel all the time. And of course, in terms of independent architecture model, we can do end-to-end, right? Integrated model. So we can have a digital map. I think you can look at my earlier presentation. I think I've talked a lot on this, right? About how you get the so-called end-to-end architecture model. So with that, I think this is my last slide, right? About the good news for the FSI only in Singapore and also in Malaysia, right? So in Singapore, if you are working in the financial services, or if you are individual, right? If you're Singapore PR or a permanent resident, you can apply for the IBF grant. Okay, the grant is super generous. Is 90%, and you can also claim the skill future 10%. So basically, it's free of charge. Okay, in Malaysia also got claimable under HSRDA, Penjana, and yeah, so pretty much there. But Hong Kong also have a grant, but Indonesia and other country, I'm not so sure. There isn't much grant from the government, but Singapore, Malaysia, and Hong Kong have a government grant available to all the architecture courses.